Have you ever wanted to get information from HighLevel into another app or from another app that you use or a CRM that you use into HighLevel? Well, guess what? You can do that and way more with webhooks. And so let's go ahead and get started on how to use those. Webhooks are by far one of the most powerful things. And is amazing is it actually runs the internet, and you probably didn't even know it. And so when we go in here to inspect, I love showing this. I learned this from somebody else. I didn't know this or learn this. And so do you see here? All of these are URL requests to a webhook. And so I could be wrong. But I'm pretty darn sure that's exactly what this is. And so these are post webhook requests that get information from somewhere and then bring it in. It actually loads and runs nearly everything that you encounter with on any of the websites that you probably are on. And so it's just how web-based websites work, and it's how applications work. So when something happens, something goes from one area to another area. That's what's happening in this website example I just showed you when I inspected. But what are webhooks? And so other than being extremely powerful and giving the ability to connect applications or make information flow from one place to another, webhooks in more technical terms are called an HTTPS request. And so HTTP is a common way of that data is transferred. You add the S there, and it is way more secure. And so that is basically what it is, and it allows applications to talk. So again, when you load your Stripe payment processor or your other CRM or your other automations platform, all that information is pulled from their database back into the console or your website, and then it is viewed. The same thing, you can actually trigger those things yourself when you want to, let's say, HighLevel fills out a form and then you update something in your payment processor for your accounting, and which is an example we'll go through. Or the other way, when you bring things out of or from a third party place like your payment processor, let's say you use QuickBooks, and you want from QuickBooks it to flow into HighLevel to update a contact, you can do that as well. And we'll show you an example of that with Stripe. And so let's review the parts of a webhook. So here is some definitions. So when you hear myself or somebody else throw these terms around, these definitions around, be sure that you check out and you know what they are. So HTTPS request is just the name of the GET or POST or PUT request. Those are common requests that is used in API and webhooks. So GET, POST, and PUT, and we'll check those out in just a moment. I'll explain a little bit more what those are. Those variations of a webhook request that you can do. A triggering event. Webhooks are trigger based. So for example, I loaded the website and then the website sent webhook request to get information back to display it to you. That's what happened on this page right here when you loaded our help-based document. And so a triggering event is required. So something has to happen. When something happens, then the webhook is launched and a request is made, and then things are now flowing. And so webhooks are trigger-based events. That's why it's important to know that there needs to be a triggering event. The next is a webhook URL. This is important. And so the webhook URL is kind of like an address or a phone number for a business. And so, for example, when you need to call a friend, you need their phone number. And so the webhook URL is where you make the call when you need to make a request. So for example, let me scroll down here to one of our examples. For example here, I have Zapier is going to be our primary thing. I'll unpack that in a minute, like what Zapier is and everything like that. But in this example, something happens in Stripe, which is connected to Zapier. So a payment is made in Stripe, a common payment processor. And then from there, Zapier needs to call somebody, and we want to call HighLevel. But Zapier actually doesn't know where HighLevel is because we need to send a webhook from Zapier, which has from our payment, into HighLevel. But where do they call? Like which sub account or which agency account? We have probably approaching hundreds of thousands of sub account. Well, not approaching. We have more than hundreds of thousands of sub account and tens of thousands of agency accounts. Where does this information being sent to? And then within those sub accounts, which workflow? The webhook URL allows that to know like where to land the plane, like where are you calling to give the information up to it. That's what the webhook URL is. More on that again as we go through our example. A payload is a fancy thing for all of the information that we send in the webhook. So it's common that we refer to things when we're talking about API or other things as a payload. So it's just all that information packaged up for you to use over there, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Query parameters are not going to be covered a ton in this video, but they're much like UTM parameters. If you also don't know what UTM parameters are, which is okay, basically what they are is an ability to pass additional information through the webhook URL. And so I'll show you briefly an example in the FAQ. We don't train heavily on UTM query parameters here because it's an advanced skill with webhooks. You can consult your own developer. Purposes of this video, in order to keep it shorter and more digestible, we're focusing on that. But if you see that word or somebody asks that word, you know a little bit about what it is. It's the ability to send information through the URL, which allows basically for you to use information better. So information that wasn't sent well during the payload. So if the payload doesn't have the information clean, which is the information sent, the query parameters are going to help with that, or the query params. Mapping is a fancy way of saying from the payload or that information, I want this to be connected here into this field. I want this to be connected into this field. So you're basically like, from the payload, now that it comes in from a place, I want it to do this in this system. That's called a mapping, or a mapping reference that you're going to see as well when you're seeing in the inbound webhooks URL. So how do webhooks work? Essentially, a triggering an event happens. When the trigger happens, the application packages the information, makes a call, looks for the phone number. Okay, there's the webhook URL, there's the phone number, there's the address. I'm going to ship it or fly it or call it, whatever analogy you want to use. I'm now going to send it to a place that's going to be received, and then they can use it. So again, it's kind of 4 steps. So we got a triggering event here, which is a purchase made in Stripe, for example. A payload is sent from Stripe, or you can, Zapier is easier to connect, and we're going to talk about that. A payload is sent from the payment processor or third-party app into HighLevel, which calls the URL. HighLevel receives that information for that payload and then uses that information in to perform tasks and to update something. So now I've connected my Stripe and my HighLevel together into a webhook. What's nice is we actually have a Stripe integration and a bunch of other things, but if you need to do something extra, which happens, webhooks will let you do that. All right, now into the meat of things. I'm actually going to walk you step by step through how to do an inbound webhook and an outbound webhook. And so let's go ahead and hop in. So first, an inbound webhook. First, there are actually 2 ways to use webhooks in HighLevel. There's an inbound webhook and then an outbound webhook. So I like to think about it like airplanes flying from one airport to another airport. So one airport is HighLevel, the other airport is a third-party app. And Zapier, we're going to be using Zapier a lot in this analogy here, or in these examples, because Zapier is probably one of the most common and easier to teach somebody how to use webhooks versus teaching how to use Postman or other or even the native outbound webhook functions within like Shopify or something. It's normally easier just to use Zapier. In fact, we use them internally all the time. And so here's what happens here. And so something happens in Stripe. Stripe is integrated and connected with Zapier. I'll show you how to do that right now. Zapier sends that information to HighLevel using the inbound webhook to send it out to HighLevel. And then HighLevel uses that information to update a contact. Let's actually do that right now. So first, something happens in Stripe. So first we need a Zapier trigger here because the information is flowing from Zapier into HighLevel. So in Zapier, you're going to need to make sure premium webhooks is actually a paid feature for them. And so you need to make sure you upgrade to their minimum plan or whatever in order to use it. If you're going to use Zapier, you don't have to use Zapier. You could check out Make or Padly or another one, or use a native or consulted developer. But Zapier is by far, in my opinion, the easiest way. They have a bunch of integrations, a bit more expensive than some of their competitives, but the UI and the amount of integrations is really good. I think it's pretty. I think it's worth it. We're going to create a new Zap. So first of all, we'll need a trigger. In this case, the Zap trigger is Stripe. So when something happens in Stripe, I want something to happen, which is going to be I want to send information to HighLevel because it's going from Stripe or if you're using another integration, into there. So here I just want to say new payment. So a new payment has occurred. I'm going to select my Stripe account, which I've already done here. If you needed to change or integrate it, you need to log in and have enough permissions to do that. And then when I go to test the trigger, it's going to fly back to me and then give me a bunch of the information that I need here, which is great. So now that I have this, I now have the trigger. I now need to create the action. The action is a webhook action that's going to go from Zapier into HighLevel. So let's set that up here. We need to type in webhooks by Zapier. Again, it's a premium action, so you need to have a paid plan. Most of the time you're going to use post requests. The only times you can use get and put is unique circumstances that aren't covered in this video. So in short, a get request is, hey Jarvis, do you have that thingamajiggy or that widget I was looking for? Yes? Awesome, sweet. Let me know all the information about that. Oh, you don't? No worries. Thanks for checking. That's what a get request is. Does something exist? Let me find it based on something. A post request is just simple, like I'm just going to write it, boom, information flows. I just want to give it to whomever, which in this case we're going to do. And then the put request is when you actually update an existing object. So it's like an API lingo, and so which is different than a post. So post creates a new one, a put updates an existing one. For now, don't worry about those things. We're just going to select post. So always use post here with the webhooks here. So now I need the URL, which remember is the phone number. So now I'm going to come into HighLevel. I need to create a new workflow. And then in this workflow, I need to select inbound webhook. Now that I have this inbound webhook, I need to copy it and then put it right here. Now that it's right there, now Zapier knows when the information comes in from Stripe, which is triggered. You see up here, when it's triggered, it's now going to do the action in Zapier to shoot it over to HighLevel, which is going to make a phone call directly to the correct agency, sub account, and then workflow that I'm using. And so here it's going to take off from Zapier and then land in HighLevel to complete the analogy there. I'm going to scroll down. Don't worry about these other things. There are a lot of advanced things. Again, webhooks run a lot, like in combination with API, it runs like nearly everything. So it's actually complicated. You can do a lot with them. Here, we're just keeping it nice and simple. This is a simple webhook post request. I'm now going to test the step. You always want to test the step. Awesome, success. Now, if everything goes well, when I fetch a sample request, it's going to show in here. I actually can't move forward until this is done. Fantastic, it's in there. And then you see my payload here, which has everything I need there. I'm now going to do save. And then now what you need to do is you need to update a contact object. And so that's because every automation needs a contact. Without it, an automation can't run. It's just how it works. So here, I'm going to go ahead and add the email. I need to go into here and then find, I know in Stripe it's called customer email. And then boom, you see their customer email. And I found that in here. So there's going to be a lot of things in the payload that will be there. So another way to make it easy, again, is you would put it into the a query parameter, but we don't show that here, but it could make it a little easier to find this. Regardless, you'll need to find this right here and then save. And then now it's going to create / update the contact. And then again, now I can actually update it. So let's say this is a custom field I have. And now I can actually put in the product. Let's say this is it says the product, and so now I just search for product. Let's see here. We'd have to see what the object is called in. So for now, I'm just going to say, let's say I want to bring in the customer ID, and so which is actually a helpful thing to have on some of these things. And so now I'm going to save. So now I'm all good now. Now every single time a new payment is made in Stripe, it's going to be triggered in Zapier. Zapier is going to bring that information, make a post request to HighLevel. HighLevel is going to catch that information here and then run it and then update the contact here. So that is the full journey here for how to do an inbound request. Again, Zapier does it. There is a trigger on Zapier. Zapier runs an action. The action takes off from the airport of Zapier, lands at the airport of HighLevel using that phone number or address, the webhook URL. HighLevel can then use that information to update the contact object in HighLevel. By the way, that's not the only thing you could do with that payload. You could do a bunch of other things. And so there's a lot that you can do with that. But this is just a simple example to show you inbound webhooks. Now, outbound webhooks. This is a cool one. Outbound webhooks, meaning something happens in HighLevel. I want to fly it out and go to another place. I can do that right here via this. So let's go ahead and do the other direction. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to rename this right quick because I always rename things and then I didn't here. So this is the inbound. So here's the inbound webhook example that we did. I'm now going to go into HighLevel, start from scratch. I'm now going to create a new one. Let's say it is a form submitted. And form is opt-in claim. Save. I'm now going to do a webhook. So why am I doing this? Here on this scenario, something happens in HighLevel, in this case, a form submission. I want to trigger a workflow to fire. So in order to do that, I need a HighLevel trigger as the form, which is what I'm doing here. So when the form is submitted in HighLevel, that's what I'm saying here. Now I need to send information from HighLevel to Zapier, but I need a phone number, I need an address, right? If I'm going to fly or make a phone call, I need to know where I'm going, and I don't know that right now, and so I actually need to get a webhook URL from Zapier. So here is the inbound webhook example. So I'm done with this example. I can go ahead and publish it. Now I need to create a new Zap. I need to create a new Zap because I need to catch it in Zapier for Zapier to then go and do something else. And so here I'm going to do webhooks of Zapier again, but this time it's a trigger, not the action, which is important. So the trigger here is catchhook. Catchhook is another word for inbound webhook. You're going to see catchhook and inbound webhook used interchangeably on other platforms and other lingo. Just know they're the same thing. Inbound webhook, catchhook, inbound catchhook is the same thing. I'm now going to go here, and then I need to copy the webhook URL because this is the phone number I'm going to call. Now I need to, again, what I did here was I need to create an action. Oops, sorry. Webhook. And then the webhook now will post the information. Again, we want to do post. We could do always label. Again, we could do get. There's no put here, but you could do a get request here, which is, again, a different variation. Just know it's possible if a developer or somebody else asks for it from HighLevel. And then now I can actually post that from HighLevel into Zapier. And now I'm going to go ahead and run a live test to show you how it works. Okay, so now I have my form. Always make sure when you're making workflows that you do the correct form and everything. That's why I always name things diligently. Oftentimes workflows fail because you did the wrong filter or because you mislabeled something or did the wrong filter. At least that's why mine fell for me. And so I'm going to put a fake phone number here. I'm going to put a fake email here. And then I'm going to submit. Boom. I've now submitted. Oops. See, here's something else I got to make sure. You got to make sure the workflow is published. It was not published, so I need to go and resubmit it again, which I haven't done yet. Here's why I'm doing this. I actually need HighLevel to send an example payload or an example information into Zapier, so then Zapier can map it. Which is, again, when I take the information and I map it in, and I'll show you that right quick. Test trigger, you're going to see here, nothing has been sent here. That's because no one's made a call to that URL yet. I just did, but the workflow was off. And so here, I'm going to resubmit it again. Jarvis S. 1, 2, 3, 4. And test. Okay. Now, when we come over to here, we test the trigger. We should see it here in just a moment. Oh, okay, just one more refresh. So now we got all the information in here, which is a payload. Now we can actually map it. So here, I'm going to go to Stripe because I want to update something in Stripe. So let's just say I want to create a customer or update a customer. So here I would go here. I would have to get the customer ID, which I can bring in, from somewhere else. So no need to, you would need to add a search step or something. But for the purposes of this example, I can show you here what it looks like because I showed you how to map in HighLevel, but now I want to show you how to map in Zapier. And so now when I map the information with the information from the payload and I go, I want this here, I want this here, I want this here, I want this here. And so what you do here is you click here. I like to do the little trick tab. Once you tab, you're going to land here, and then you can now insert it. So here I want to search. I know in HighLevel it is called full name. I want to insert the full name here to update that. And then let's say I want to update something else like a metadata. So let's say I want to update the metadata and just add a metadata called purchase example. And so I can update that. I can also do anything else. Let's say I want to update other things like the email, which was updated in HighLevel. Now I want to update it in Stripe. I can do that there. You saw how I mapped that. And then when this happens, we need to make sure that we are doing all required fields. Oh, I need to do this as an example. So I went ahead and did that as an example because I need that to continue. And now I test the step, and then once I fire it, it should give a success. Awesome, which means that it was updated in Stripe, so everything's working. I can now publish it, and then once I publish it, every single form submission will flow from HighLevel. It will be triggered by the HighLevel webhook, the HighLevel trigger right here when the form is submitted. It will then send the information from HighLevel via the webhook. It's going to make a phone call to Zapier. Zapier is then going to use this inbound webhook Zapier to catch it. And then when it's caught in Zapier, you can now use that information in the actions and stuff like that or to update an external source. So that is how you use outbound webhooks. And that basically completes our guide here. Some quick pro tips. One, if you're interested in on where to find the lead connector on Zapier, which is, you have HighLevel, but lead connectors are gray labels, so you have to search lead connector on Zapier, so don't be confused if you're trying to use one of our Zaps. You can also check out lead connector on Zapier, Make, and Pabbly, which are other Zapier competitors or trying to think of the parodies or similar. So I can't remember the actual name of it. It's kind of bothering me right now. But they're common integration and automation platforms. And so great for linking applications together because they have the actions and the triggers pre-built. So you don't need to know API. And so next is getting started with Zapier. So Zapier actually has some really good stuff. So if you never use Zapier or if you got your ops person or you feel like you want to take that on, you can actually go and check out these links. These are directly to Zapier. Zapier has some great resources to show you how to do everything to get started with it. Here's the query parameters. This is kind of what it looks like. This is an example in ClickUp. Again, we don't cover URL parameters or query params here for webhooks, but just so you know, there's a little tidbit here to get you started. And then as well, our developer documentation here. So if you want to, a developer, you are a developer, you can check out, learn all kinds of stuff there. We got a community and all kinds of stuff there as well. So in conclusion, thank you guys so much. This is pretty much everything you need to know about how to use webhooks in HighLevel. They are wildly powerful, a little complex, so give our support or our success a little mercy if you're asking them for help, because just like you, this is a lot to digest, but we hope this guide helps you. Thank you so much and have a great day and continuing level up.